If you're a content creator, one of the hardest things to do is constantly come up with ideas for new content. So what I'm going to do in this automation is show you how to get AI and automation platforms to do it all for you very quickly. So what I'm going to take you through is starting with a competitor website, and we can scrape all of the keywords that this website ranks for as a starting seed point. Then we can pass this through an automation. So we'll start with Airtable. It will then fire off an N8N automation, which will get a website that we've put in Airtable. It will send it to a service called Data for SEO, which will scrape and get all the keywords for that competitor. Then we'll process those seed keywords and send another request off to Data for SEO on a different HTTP request. And then we're going to get a bulk batch of questions that relate to the keywords that we scraped from that website. So the way this works is a feed from Data for SEO can go to Google on a live search page, and it can type in a keyword for us, and it can get all of the questions that people also ask. You'll notice on a Google search result page, it has people also ask or people often search, and you get a list of all these questions. So Google's done the heavy lifting for us. All we have to do is give it seed keywords. And of course, this is going to be all automated, so we're not going to be doing it. So then we're going to pass these questions all through the AI, and it's going to do a filtering step, and it's going to filter for the questions that directly relate to our brand. And we pre-train the AI on everything about our brand, so it matches up. And it only takes keywords that are relevant, that could be turned into content ideas for us, and then it stores those back at Airtable. So that's the process. I'm going to walk you through it step by step, but first let me just show you this in action, and then we'll put it together. Okay, so we started Airtable. All we do is have a competitor website that we want to work with. Now you could have a list here of 100, but let's just start with one. All we're going to do is create a field, and it's called Get Keywords. Once I triggered that automation by simply doing that, over at N8N, this is the automation here that's listening for that webhook to fire. You can see it's fired in there now. So it sent the first request to get the keywords for that domain, which is this module here. That's done. It's sent it through now to the AI, which is processing all these keywords and filtering them to see which keywords are actually relevant to our brand, because we don't want to be looking up questions for keywords from a competitor that are irrelevant. That would be a waste of time. The AI has now finished that and has gone through a filtering step. Now it's sent a request to Data for SEO to get questions from Google that relate to these keywords that were relevant. So you got to remember, we're already dealing with relevant keywords. Now we're doing relevant searches with Data for SEO for questions that relate to those keywords. Once this is finished, we then can bulk send those into a new AI module here, which is happening right now. And it's another filtering step. The AI is now looking and filtering all the questions that relate to our niche. And then it's updating Airtable. So if we pop back to Airtable and go to the questions tab, you can see it's automatically now got all of these questions that are highly relevant to our niche. So these can be content ideas. Now you can build this system out to a lot of different use cases. You'll see as we build it, you'll get ideas and say, oh, I can do this, I can do this, I can add to it. That's the whole point of these automations. You take it whichever way you want, but I'll show you the structure and how to do these API calls and how to get them to filter and add into Airtable. So let's get started. The first thing you need to do is create an account at Airtable. So go and get an account at Airtable, and then you want to create a table here called competitors. And you want to create two columns. One of them is just called website. So website, then you go URL. That's where you put in the URL. When you're putting the URLs in, it's best to you have to put them in without anything before the beginning of it. So no www. Just put a clean URL like that. Then create a status field here and call it status. And it's a single select. And whoops, I'll get back to that. And then you have two fields here that you want to create called get keywords and complete. So that's all you need to do here to get started. On the second table here, just create a new table and just have one row here and just call it questions, and it's a single line of text. So pretty straightforward. This is where all your questions are going to go, and this is where the competitors are. Now we need to build an automation to connect Airtable to N8N. So the way we do that is over at the Automations tab here. Go up to Automations, bottom left-hand corner, Create Automation, and then you're going to go when a record matches a condition. And then over on the right-hand side, the table is called competitors. That's one you choose. And then the condition is when the status is get keywords. Okay, once you've done that, you want to then add run a script. And then I'll give you the code here that you want to whack in here in this box. If you just copy, I can't get that all on the screen. Take a screenshot now and then just add that bit on there. then paste that all in here. You're going to have to change this URL out when you get your webhook, which I'll show you how to get in a sec. But just remember, when you come back, I'll tell you to come back, you're going to paste your URL in there. On the left-hand side, you need a variable. So you create one called record ID. It's a capital I for I, an ID rather. And then in the value, click that plus button and click Airtable record ID. And that's all you need to do in here. And then you click finish and turn this automation on. So what we've done in this step here is we've created a trigger on when this automation is going to fire. And we've said here, when a record matches this condition, fire this webhook, right? So if we go back to our table, here is the trigger. When this status field is get keywords, that's going to fire the automation. So now we need to head over to N8N and start creating this. So let's go to N8N. You need an account at N8N. You can get a free trial over there, or you can self-host it, and it's much cheaper. So just get a free trial for the 14-day trial they give you. First thing you need to do is create a webhook. So in here, on the right-hand side, just create webhook. So go webhook there, whack that in. Once you got the webhook in here, in this test URL field, grab that URL. That's your webhook URL. Take that back to here, automations, and make sure that you put it in the run script field in there. So just make sure you don't delete the quotes, put it in there and click finish. Okay, I know I'm moving rather quick, but some people have already done this sort of stuff a lot and some haven't, so I have to go at a reasonable pace. Next module is an Airtable module. So over on the right, just click Airtable. So Airtable, and what you're actually doing is a get a record module. Grab that. Now, in order to connect Airtable back to N8N, you actually need to do the authentication. I'm not going to do it in this video. Just follow the instructions by clicking the docs link at the top. And then what you need to do over at Airtable is you just need to get your credentials to authorize this. Then you come back in here, and then you add in your credentials in here. And that's all you need to do. And then once that's connected, then you'll be able to, from the drop downs here, the base and table will show up that you're working on. So you'd choose the table, the base that you're working on, and also the table. In this case, the table is competitors. So just to remind you what we're doing, back to the data. This is the table, content ideas, and this is the base, content ideas, and this is the table, competitors. So we connect those two up, and then in the record ID field, we want to match the record ID that came through that webhook. So go down to the webhook there. At the bottom of this webhook that fired, you'll see down there record ID, drag and drop that in. Make sure this is set to expression or it won't work. Once you've done that, click test, and then you can see over in the result, you can see that this record's now being pulled through. There's the website that we're working on. Now we've got our website into N8N. That's what you're trying to achieve with that step there. The next module is an HTTP request module. So go on the side, HTTP request, grab that. In here, this is where you're going to connect to Data for SEO. So you're going to need an account at Data for SEO. So head over to Data for SEO, which is here, get an account. You need to put a couple of dollars balance. My balance is getting pretty low, but just put I think you can put $5. Once you've got an account set up, go to the API access area up here and get your API credentials. Whenever you're doing these automations, you need to do a lot of API connecting. So you just have to get used to it and learn how to do it. So go to API access, get your credentials. Once you've done that, head back to N8N here and fill them all in. So what you're doing in the fields here are, you leave the method as post. The URL for this is this URL. So just take a screenshot of that, whack it in there exactly like that. Okay, and the authentication, you just leave it exactly how I've got it set up, like this. In this header auth section, this is where you're going to have to create and put in your credentials that you got from your API Data for SEO. This is where you put that stuff in here in order to connect it up. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay, slide the headers to yes, and in these fields here, just use headers below. You actually don't need to put this authentication. It's actually done it up there already. But anyway, this is what you can put it in twice. Authorization and basic space. And this is where you would put your API token that Data for SEO gives you in here. So that's how you get that header section connected. So just copy what I've got. But basically after basic, you would put a space and then you put your API token. Yours is going to be different. Mine's blanked out here for the video. Then in here, just leave this the same as what I've got here. Content type, application JSON, slide the body to yes. Content type JSON using JSON below. So just copy everything I've got here. I know I'm going pretty quick, but it's just, you can just copy it. You don't really need to think about it. And here, again, just copy it. Take a screenshot. Now you can alter these variables here. Data for SEO, if you go over to Data for SEO, you can go to their playground section and you can play around here in playground. You can play around with the different endpoints that they've got. And I encourage you to do so because they've got an incredible amount of data that you can pull and do automations with. So the particular one that we're using, I can't remember exactly where it is. I'll have to look through these later, but you can choose different keywords, different endpoints that you want, and then you can play around with them. But the cool thing is down at the bottom, they give you a code example here, and they show you how to set up your HTTP module. So all I'm doing here is in the data raw section at the bottom, this is what I'm pasting in the body. Now, you could change that. You could change that and have like a different location. You could change it and have a different language. You could do all sorts of stuff and then get the code example, and they'll show you what to put into your HTTP module. But anyway, back to here, if you just leave it how I've got it, it works. The only thing that I'll draw your attention to is the limit. Over on the limit, for this example, I've just set it to 25. Now you could set that to 100 or 200 to get more keywords. I don't want to do it for this video because it will take longer for me to process than when I do an example, but you can change that limit there. Now, we need to map in the actual website. Otherwise, Data for SEO doesn't know what we want to scrape and get the keywords for, right? So this is where we use dynamic mapping. So in the target field, in between these two quotes, you can see I've dynamically mapped that website. So you grab the website, drop and drag it in there, and it's dynamically mapped. And you can see over on the right, it's reading the actual website. That's all you need to do. Once you've got that set up, you can click test run, and that will go out and get all the keywords that relate to that website for you. So once that step is done, we're going to then add a code node here afterwards to clean up the result, because what comes back, not all of it's useful. We just want to clean and get what we want. So add a code node. So go over on the right and put code like that. And then in the code node, just copy and paste what I've got here. Just take a screenshot, whack it in like that. And then what it's going to do is it's going to give you a nice clean output. See on the right-hand side here, all these keywords now are tidied up. I've got 25 results. They're nice and tidy. And now I can process these keywords that have come back. Okay, so that's what we're trying to get to, is a nice clean list of keywords that now we can work with. So now that I got my clean list of keywords, I'm going to add this basic LLM chain. So again, on the right, you get all your modules. Just type in basic LLM chain. When you're doing this, you need an account at OpenAI in order to run this AI module. This is just a ChatGPT AI module. Now, they've got lots of different models that you can use, but you need an account at OpenAI. So this isn't just like a free ChatGPT account where you type in and ask questions. You actually need to get the back-end API access. Just like we're doing with all these other services, you need to go and get your API credentials. So you need an account at OpenAI. Then you go into their again, I'll just show you here. You go into their docs, if you're N8N's docs here, if you don't know how to do these things, follow this docs here and it will show you how to connect everything. Or just go over to OpenAI, set up an account and get your API credentials. And then in here, you just go create new credentials, API key, and then you just need to put all the details they give you and then connect it up and click save. Once you've done that, you can then choose all the different models that OpenAI has to operate. I've got GPT-4o for now, but you can choose whatever model you like. Okay, but you need to connect an account with OpenAI in order to be able to have this access or it won't work. Okay, so once you've done that, off this basic LLM chain, you can see there's a model link. This is where you would add that. So if I didn't have that there, and I can just disconnect this for a second just to show you, you can add that by clicking plus, and then on the right, it opens up this, and then I can choose the model that I want to grab. So then I would just grab 4.0 for this example, which is there like that. That's how you connect that over there like that. Okay. Now let's jump inside here and prompt this thing. What we want to do is click the source prompt to define below, and then in this box here, we want to prompt the AI. And what we're doing is we're going to give it this prompt, and we're going to say, here's some keywords that I'm going to give you. I'm going to iterate them one by one, and I'm going to say, look at the keyword and tell me if this is a relevant keyword for my brand. And you need to tell it what your brand's about, which we do below. And what we're doing here is getting the AI to filter these out, because we don't want to further process keywords from a competitor that are completely irrelevant. That'll just be a waste of time. So what we do here is say, review the keyword below and decide whether it's a niche-specific keyword that matches closely to our brand. I've provided you with our brand summary. You can read through this on your own. I'm not going to read through it all now, but I've given it examples of what not to do, what to do. Then I map dynamically the keyword from the code node like that. And then I tell it the purpose and what we're trying to achieve. And then I give it our brand summary so it understands the brand. Otherwise, it doesn't know how to tell if a keyword's a good keyword or not. You got to give it context. And then I give it an example. Here's an output. And I just say, this is how you would output the JSON like that. Okay. So I copy that JSON output. Whoops, I made a mistake on that one. Let's undo that. Okay, it won't let me undo. There we go. Undo that and close out of there. We also want to click this or slide this over to require specific output format to green. And then what we want to do here is add on the structured output. So in order to add this on, you just click the side button there and look for structured output parser like that. And here, this is where you give that JSON structure that you want it to output. You tell it how you want it to output the keyword. So basically, if it's a keyword that's a good match, it's going to output it. Otherwise, it's not going to. So you can see here, when I previously ran this, these are the 25 operations it ran through, and it gave me a keyword. If it was a good match, it outputted it. And then if it was a bad match, it wouldn't have. It looks like all of these were good matches because it seems like all of them were output. It didn't block anything, which makes sense because to the brand that I'm working on, this is a good match. These are all good matched keywords. So it's filtered out anything that we didn't want. Then we can add a filter module here, okay? So if it had found a keyword that was a bad match, what we had told it was to output the word null instead of keyword. So what we can do in this step is just filter out all the bad keywords. So let me just jump back in here. We tell it if a keyword is not a good match, output null. So if it had found a keyword that was like terrible match, it would have output null when it had processed that keyword. So what we can do on the other side of that here is filter out anything that had a null response because we don't want it to go any further along our AI automation here. So all you do there is go in and add this filter module, and then you just drag the output keyword here, drag it in there, make sure it's set to expression. Then you just change this field to does not contain null. And then basically, if it does contain null, it will be blocked. But in this case, actually, it did find some here that were blocked. There we go. So there must have been some. I just didn't go through the whole list. So you can see all these null, 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 null. These were the keywords that the AI didn't think were a good fit for our brand. So it's actually blocked all these ones, which is great. And these ones it did think were a good fit, and it's let them through. Okay, so now we've got a filtering step going on. So at this stage, we've got a nice clean set of highly relevant keywords to our niche that we've got from our competitor. Now, keep in mind, I limited this to 25. You could set this to hundreds. What we're going to do now is add another HTTP module, which is again to data for SEO. So go back to save you time. Just click this one, the 3 dots, and go duplicate. All you're changing here is the URL at the top. So once you get in here, you can keep everything the same. Just jump into the URL and change that endpoint. It's a different endpoint, so use that URL instead. Hop out of here, and then in the body section down below, everything else can stay the same. We're just going to have to change out what we map in here. So here, what we're mapping in is the keyword, right? We drag the keyword from the filtered ones that made it through, and we drag and drop that in there like this. Okay, so what this is doing is I just hop out of there now. It's sending another request to data for SEO, and it's doing a live Google search on this keyword that we've given it, and it's going to look for all of the questions that people ask related to that keyword. So I'll show you how this looks from the results page. If we hop out of this one here, the results that came through from here, we can now filter them at an edit module here to make it a little bit cleaner, and then I'll show you what it looks like. But first of all, just grab an edit fields module. So go here and go edit, edit fields set module like that. Whack that in. And then what you want to do in here is we're going to name a field and call it people ask. So that's the result for the questions that Google gives you. And we're going to set an expression in the string box here like this. I want you just to copy that. Okay, it's going to save you a lot of time if you just copy this, and it's going to work perfectly fine. All it's doing is it's looking at all that complicated stuff that came back from that data for SEO live search. You can see there's a lot of data in here, a huge amount of data that we could do a lot with this. But for this video's sake, I'm only taking one field out of all of this data that I got. And I'm just taking the questions that were from live search results, and I'm filtering them. And then I'm mapping them and joining them together. And you can see on the right-hand side, here's all the questions that were related to that one keyword. Okay, so these are obviously from a relevant keyword, so they're going to be relevant questions. So if I hop out of that, because I iterated and sent this one by one into that live HTTP request, I got 16 results. So each keyword had a batch of questions. So I did it 16 times for the keywords that I processed through it. So you can see all of these questions that were related to those keywords that I sent in. So that's what this is doing in here. So now I've got a bunch of really highly relevant questions, but I want to filter those questions even more and make sure that they could be good for content ideas. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add another code node here. So click code node, open it up. In the field here, just copy what I've got, take a screenshot, whack that in. Once that's done, what happens here is it takes all the results from the previous 16 questions that I had, and it joins them together into one giant list of relevant questions to my niche. Now I've got a whole bunch of market research for my niche of real questions that real people actually look and ask for. So if you want to know the heartbeat of your niche, here's how to do it. This is what people really want to know about questions in your niche. So now that I've got all these questions, I can add another AI module here, and all I got to do is duplicate this one here. So duplicate everything, whack that over there, and then all I got to do is tweak the prompt a little bit inside of here. All I'm doing here is I'm just tweaking the prompt. Instead of saying review the keyword that I gave you, which was how we used it the first time, now I'm saying review the questions that I give you and tell me if they're relevant to my brand or not, and get rid of the ones that aren't. So you can just change this prompt up. You can have a look and take a screenshot of what I've written, but you could improve this. But all I'm doing here is just feeding the questions in by mapping from here into that. And I'm changing the prompt, and I'm asking it to output questions in this JSON format below. Okay, so if you look at all these questions that have come through, I'm saying, I want you to do the heavy lifting for me. Filter through all these questions. If there's duplicate questions, then just ditch them. I don't want duplicates. If there's any closely matching things, get rid of them or join them together. You can do whatever you like to slice and dice it, but you get the AI to do the heavy lifting for you. So here's all these questions now. I'm going to get out of this. And then the AI is going to process that, and then it's going to spit them out in a format. Now, in the structured format, give it the format you want. You want each question like this in this format, because then you can add them back to Airtable one by one by iterating it. So give it an example like that. And then you'll notice here, look at the output that we got over here, all these questions. Now, these are the ones that have been filtered that are relevant for my niche. So these are really great content ideas for writing articles or YouTube videos or whatever. Now, all we got to do is add them back to Airtable. So the way we do that is we go to get an Airtable module, which is not a get record. This Airtable module is actually a create or update record. Grab that one. And then what you're doing in here is you leave everything the same, except the table that you're working with now is not the competitor table, it's the questions table. So you want to map these questions back in. But it's important that you use the create or update, because once you run this multiple times, if you've let's say the second time you run it, if a question that it finds here is already in your Airtable database, you don't want to duplicate it. Otherwise, you have a mess of a database. So what you want to do is check, does that question already exist? If it doesn't, then create it. Otherwise, it won't create a new row. So we do that by columns to match on, and we choose the question column, okay? And then the value to match on down below is the actual question itself, okay? So that's what we're mapping in here. We're saying, I want you to match on question and check. So all it's saying is all these questions that you found here, when you go to this questions table, just check if they already exist. If you find a match, then don't add a new row. If you don't find a match, go ahead and add a new row. That's all that's telling it to do. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Okay, so you run that, and then all of these keywords get added back to Airtable, and then the automation is complete. So there, if we look at this automation now, we started with a seed domain back at Airtable. So we started with a competitor domain. We sent it into N8N, and we got all the keywords related to that domain. We then filtered those keywords to make sure they were relevant. And then we passed those keywords into another data for SEO request to do a live Google search and get all the questions related to the relevant keywords. We then filtered those questions to make sure that they were relevant to our brand and got rid of duplicates. And then we passed them through and added them back to Airtable. So if we go back to Airtable, the result was we had one competitor domain, and now we've got all these relevant questions that we can create content on. So that's a simple automation on how you can use a lot of different tools to achieve a task. So what you could do from here is create articles from this, and there's a lot of other automations you can do. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to stop there. Hope you found it useful. If you did, do me a huge favor and hit subscribe and thumbs up and a comment below and let me know what type of automations you want me to build for future videos. Thanks for listening.